Clay Bridger smelled death before he saw the woman. The scent rode the wind off the northern range, blood and alkali dust mixing with creek water. His horse stopped short at the cottonwood shade, ears flat. Clay dismounted slow, hand moving to the revolver on his hip. She lay half in the water, one leg twisted wrong. Bones showed white through torn deerskin. Her dark braid floated in the current like black rope, but her hand clutched a folded paper against her chest, knuckles locked tight even in unconsciousness. Clay knelt, checked her pulse, still breathing. He pried the paper loose, unfolded it. Homestead Patent, Section 14, Crowfeather Springs, 160 acres, water rights included. The corner showed a dark stain, blood, old and brown, a man's signature above it, dated March 1881. Clay's stomach dropped. That was Merrick's land. His boss had filed a claim 2 weeks back. The woman's eyes opened, amber brown, wary. 29 hours to file that deed, ma'am, Clay said. And you can't even stand. Clay pulled his canteen, tilted water to her lips. She drank greedy, eyes never leaving his face. Can you move? He asked. She tried, cried out. The sound cut through the cottonwood silence like a knife scraping bone. Legs broke, Clay said. Compound fracture below the knee. You need a doctor. No doctor. Her voice came thick, accent heavy. Need land office. Stillwater. That's 22 miles south. I know. She pushed herself up on her elbows. Sweat beaded her forehead. Deed has to file. Friday, 4 o'clock. Clay checked his pocket watch. Silver case, worn smooth. The hands read 11:17, Thursday morning, 29 hours. He looked at the deed again. The legal description matched the northern section he'd been riding fence on for 3 years. Good grazing. Year-round spring that fed Merrick's cattle through every drought, worth $5,000 in water rights, maybe more. This land's contested, ma'am. It's mine. She grabbed his wrist, her grip stronger than he expected. My husband filed it. Legal, witnessed, sealed. Your husband's name, James Crowfeather? She nodded once. What happened to him? Her jaw tightened. White men happened. Clay didn't press. He'd heard enough stories from the Apache campaigns, seen enough to know most of them were true. He looked back at her leg. The break was clean, but the bone had torn through. If infection set in, she'd lose the leg. If fever came, she'd lose more. I'm going to have to set this, he said. It'll hurt like hellfire. Do it. Clay stood, walked to the creek bank where willows grew thick, cut 3 straight branches with his knife. The blade was sharp, the wood green and flexible. He stripped the bark with his thumbs. The smell of sap rose bitter and clean. When he came back, she'd pulled herself to drier ground. Her breathing came short and tight. What's your name? Clay asked. Sarah? I'm Clay, Clay Bridger. He knelt beside her. You got any whiskey? No. He pulled a flask from his coat. This'll help. She shook her head. Need my mind clear. Suit yourself. He poured whiskey over the wound. The alcohol cut through blood and dirt. She hissed but didn't scream. Her hands dug into the sand, fingers splayed wide. Clay worked fast. He'd set bones before. Men's bones during the war, horse legs after, once a child's arm when the preacher's boy fell from a hayloft. The principle was the same. Line up the break, hold it steady, splint it tight enough to heal. He gripped her calf with both hands. On 3. Don't count, just do it. He pulled. The bone slid back under skin with a wet sound. Sarah's back arched. Her teeth clenched so hard he heard them grind, but she didn't scream. Clay lashed the willow splints with strips torn from his own shirt, tied them firm but not tight enough to stop blood flow. His hands moved automatic, muscle memory from years that felt like someone else's life. When he finished, he sat back. His shirt hung open, sweat cooling on his chest despite the September heat. Sarah's eyes were closed, her face the color of old ash. You still with me? Yes. You're tougher than most men I know. Had to be. She opened her eyes, looked at him direct. Who do you work for? Clay hesitated. The question hung between them like smoke. Ranch foreman, he said. Been riding this territory 15 years. That's not what I asked. The cottonwood leaves rustled overhead. Somewhere a hawk called. Clay could hear cattle lowing in the distance on land that might or might not belong to the woman bleeding in front of him. Silas Merrick, he said finally. Her face didn't change, but something in her eyes went cold. Then you know, she said. He wants this land. He filed a claim 2 weeks back. Says his daddy's original range included this section. His daddy's range ended 4 miles south. I have the survey map to prove it. Where? Burned. She touched the deed. This is all I got left. They came Tuesday night, 10 men, took our horses, burned the cabin. I ran. Horse spooked at the creek crossing, fell. Clay's jaw worked. He knew what they meant. Hired guns, land grabbers, men who wore badges sometimes and didn't other times, depending on who paid better. You report it? Sarah laughed. No humor in it. To who? The sheriff drinks at Merrick's saloon every Saturday night. Clay stood, wiped his hands on his pants. Blood and dirt came away in dark streaks. He looked south toward Stillwater. 22 miles of open country, then looked at the woman who couldn't walk, couldn't ride, could barely sit up. I got a line shack 8 miles west, he said. You can rest there. I'll bring a doctor. No time for rest. Land office closes Friday at 4. If I miss it, the claim goes to public auction Monday. Merrick will outbid anyone. You can't ride 22 miles with that leg. Then I'll crawl. Clay stared at her, at the set of her jaw, the way her hand still gripped that deed like it was the only thing keeping her alive. Maybe it was. Clay fashioned a travois from fence poles in his saddle blanket, lashed them together with rope from his saddlebag. The knots were tight, the poles parallel. He'd built enough drag sleds for injured cattle to know what would hold. Sarah watched him work, didn't offer help, couldn't. When he lifted her onto the blanket, she went rigid. Her breath came in short gasps. The ride would tear her apart, but leaving her here would kill her. 8 miles, Clay said. Try not to move. I won't. He mounted his roan gelding. The horse was 15 hands, strong in the chest, used to rough country. Clay wrapped the travois ropes around his saddle horn and started west at a walk. Behind them, the poles scraped dirt. Sarah's muffled groans reached him every time they hit a rock or dip. The sound made his teeth ache. The sun climbed toward noon. Heat shimmered off the grassland. Clay's shirt stuck to his back, dark with sweat. He kept his eyes moving, scanning ridges, watching for movement, listening for anything that didn't belong. 6 miles in, he saw them. 2 riders, silhouetted on the eastern ridge. Too far to identify, but close enough to be watching. They sat their horses still, not hiding, not approaching, just there. Clay recognized the postures, Jake Wilson and Tom Hayes. Both worked for Merrick. Jake had been his friend for 15 years, ever since Clay signed on as a Green Ranch hand fresh from the cavalry. Now Jake was watching him haul an Apache woman with a contested land deed across Merrick's territory. By sundown, Merrick would know everything. The line shack appeared just before 1 o'clock, a squat log structure with a tin roof and a single window. Clay used it during fence riding season, when the northern range needed daily checks. It smelled of wood smoke and old coffee and the particular loneliness of places where men sleep alone. He pulled Sarah inside, settled her on the cot in the corner. The mattress was thin, stuffed with straw, but better than ground. She collapsed back, eyes closing, her forehead burned under his palm. Fever's starting, Clay said. I know. He lit the iron stove with kindling from the box, fed it split pine. The smoke rose sharp and resinous. Within minutes, heat filled the small space. Clay boiled water in a dented pot, made coffee dark enough to stand a spoon in, poured 2 tin cups, set one beside Sarah's cot. She didn't touch it. You should drink, he said. Should do a lot of things. Clay sat at the plank table. From here, he could see through the window to the ridge where Jake and Tom had been. They were gone now, riding back to report. His mind worked through the options. All of them bad. If he helped Sarah reach Stillwater, Merrick would fire him, probably blacklist him across every ranch in the territory. $40 a month wasn't much, but it was all Clay had. No savings, no land, no family to fall back on. If he didn't help her, she'd die. The fever would take her by tomorrow, or the infection, or just the simple fact that a woman with a broken leg couldn't survive alone in country that killed healthy men. The door swung open without warning. Silas Merrick filled the frame. 55 years old, thick through the shoulders with a face like sun-cracked leather. He wore a black coat despite the heat, smelled of cigar smoke and horse and the particular authority of men who owned things. Behind him stood Jake Wilson. His eyes met Clay's, then slid away. Clay. Merrick stepped inside. Didn't knock. Didn't ask permission. Heard you picked up a stray. She fell at the creek crossing, broke her leg. Noble of you. Merrick's gaze moved to Sarah. Lingered. That's Sarah Crowfeather, James Crowfeather's widow. So she says. She tell you about the deed? Clay's hand tightened on his coffee cup. Yeah. Then you know that land's mine. She's got a patent dated March 1881. And I've got a claim filed September 10th, 1882, prior occupancy. My father grazed cattle on that section for 30 years before James Crowfeather ever saw it. Sarah's voice came from the cot, weak but clear. Your father's range ended at Section 18, 4 miles south of Crowfeather Springs. Survey map from 1871 proves it. Merrick turned to her, smiled. That map burned Tuesday night. Unfortunate. You had your men burn it. I had my men clear squatters off contested land, legal right of any property holder. He pulled a cigar from his coat, bit the end, spit it on the floor. Here's what's going to happen. That deed doesn't get filed. Come Monday, the land goes to auction. I'll bid $500. No one else will dare bid higher. He lit the cigar with a match struck on his thumb. The sulfur smell cut through the wood smoke. He puffed twice, then reached into his coat. 5 $100 bills landed on the table, green and crisp, the kind of money Clay hadn't seen in one place since before the war. 6 months' wages, Merrick said. All you have to do is keep her here until Friday sundown. Legs broke. She can't file. Land goes to auction. Simple. Clay stared at the money. $500. Enough to buy a quarter section of his own someday. Enough to stop working for other men. Enough to betray the woman bleeding 10 feet away. That spring's worth $5,000 in water rights, Merrick continued. Feeds 600 head through drought. I've waited 2 years for James Crowfeather to make a mistake. He finally did. He died. Sarah tried to sit up, failed. My husband didn't make a mistake. You had him killed. Merrick's smile never wavered. I had nothing to do with Canyondale. That was cavalry business. Federal matter. He turned back to Clay. You've been loyal 15 years, son. Don't throw it away for a squaw with a paper. The word hung in the air like smoke, like poison. Clay looked at the money, then at Sarah, then at Jake in the doorway, who wouldn't meet his eyes. That's a lot of cash, Mr. Merrick. It is. And there's more where that came from, if you stay smart. Clay stood, walked to the stove. His boots sounded loud on the plank floor. He picked up the 5 bills, felt the texture, cotton paper, thick and real. The ink raised slightly under his thumb. He could smell it. New money, clean money. 6 months of his life in his hand. He opened the stove door. Orange light spilled across his face. The heat hit him like a wall. He fed the first bill into the flames. It curled, blackened, turned to ash. What are you doing? Merrick's voice came sharp. Clay fed in the second bill, then the third, the fourth, the fifth. $500 burned to nothing in 30 seconds. The smell of scorched ink filled the shack, bitter and chemical. Merrick's face went red. You're a damn fool, Bridger. Maybe. I'll have you blacklisted. Every ranch from here to New Mexico. You'll never work cattle again. Probably. Why? Merrick's hand moved to his coat. For a moment Clay thought he'd draw a gun, but he just pulled another cigar. She's nobody. A dead Apache's widow with a piece of paper. Clay closed the stove door, turned. My daddy used to say a man's word and a deed's seal, only 2 things worth dying for. Your daddy's been dead 20 years. Yeah, but I remember what he taught me. Merrick bit the cigar, didn't light it. His eyes moved from Clay to Sarah and back, calculating. You know what you just did? I got an idea. Jake. Merrick didn't turn. Your witness. Clay Bridger just harbored a fugitive on company land, stole company time, and broke his employment contract. No. Jake shifted in the doorway. Boss, I don't think... Are you a witness or not? Jake's shoulders slumped. Yes, sir. Good. Merrick pulled a folded paper from his coat. Letter to the Cattlemen's Association. Says Clay Bridger's a traitor and a thief. Every rancher in Arizona Territory will get a copy by Monday. He dropped it on the table where the money had been. You'll never work again, son. Not for me. Not for anyone. Merrick turned toward the door, stopped. And you, Mrs. Crowfeather, that land's mine by Monday. Your husband died for nothing. He walked out. Jake followed. Neither looked back. The sound of hoofbeats faded west. Sarah's voice came quiet from the cot. You just lost everything for a woman you don't even know. Clay poured fresh coffee. His hands were steady. That surprised him. Reckon so. Why? He sat at the table, stared at the blacklist letter. The words blurred. I fought Apaches back in '73, he said. Cavalry scout, 3rd Regiment. We followed orders, burned villages, drove families into the desert, killed men who were just trying to protect their land. He paused. The memory sat heavy in his chest. I told myself it was duty, that orders made it right. But it wasn't right. I knew it then. Know it better now. He looked at her. I already betrayed people once following orders I didn't believe in. Ain't doing it again. Sarah's eyes glistened. She said nothing. The silence stretched. Outside, a hawk called. The wind picked up, rattling the tin roof. Then hoofbeats again. Clay grabbed his rifle, moved to the window. An old man on a mule approached. White beard, leather satchel, rolled parchment under one arm. He rode slow, like a man who'd learned not to hurry years ago. Clay lowered the rifle. That's Doc Pruitt. Who? Town physician, retired surveyor. Clay opened the door. Doc Emmett Pruitt dismounted with a grunt. 70 years showed in every movement, but his eyes were sharp and his voice carried. Heard you got yourself in a fix, boy. Word travels fast. Jake stopped at the general store. Told me you were hiding an Apache woman with a deed. Figured you'd need this. He held up the rolled parchment. Clay took it. Unrolled it carefully. A hand-drawn map, faded ink on heavy paper, dated June in 71, signed at the bottom E. Pruitt, Territorial Surveyor. The map showed the entire Northern Valley, section numbers marked in careful script, boundary lines precise, and there, Section 14, Crow Feather Springs. A small notation beside it, unclaimed, spring flows year-round. 4 miles south, Section 18 was marked, S. Merrick Sr., grazing rights, 1869. The two sections didn't touch. This proves Merrick's lying, Clay said. Proves more than that. Doc stepped inside, set his satchel on the table. I surveyed this whole valley in 1871. Silas Merrick's daddy never claimed north of Section 18. That spring wasn't even on his maps. He moved to Sarah's cot, knelt with another grunt. Let me see that leg. Sarah pulled back the blanket. The splint was holding, but the skin around it had darkened. Swelling pressed against the willow branches. Doc unwrapped it. The wound had started to seep. He pressed gently. Sarah hissed. Infection's starting, Doc said. But the bone's set clean. You do this, Clay? Yeah. Good work. He pulled a brown bottle from his satchel. Carbolic acid. This'll hurt worse than the break. He poured it over the wound. The chemical smell hit sharp and clean. Sarah's hands gripped the cot frame. Her knuckles went white, but she didn't scream. Doc worked fast, cleaned the wound, wrapped it in fresh bandages from his satchel. The cloth was white, boiled clean, smelling faintly of lye soap. When he finished, he sat back on his heels. You need a surgeon. Stillwater's got one. Barely. How far? Sarah asked. 22 miles. Can I ride? You can try. Might kill you. Better than staying here. Doc looked at Clay. She's got steel in her. I'll give her that. He stood, pulled another item from his coat pocket. A brass stamp, tarnished with age, engraved on its face. E. Pruitt, Territorial Surveyor, licensed 1866. I'm still a legal witness, Doc said. Been retired 12 years, but the license don't expire. I can testify at the land office that James Crowfeather's deed is legitimate. Clay stared at the seal. Merrick will come after you, too. Let him try. I'm 70 years old, got no wife, no children, and a pension the Territorial Board can't touch. Doc's smile was grim. I've watched Silas Merrick steal land from honest folks for 20 years. About time someone stood up to him. He set the seal on the table next to the survey map. Friday at 4 o'clock. Land office in Stillwater. We get her there, that deed gets filed, and Merrick's claim dies with it. Doc checked Sarah's pulse. His fingers pressed her wrist, counting against his pocket watch. Fast. Too fast. Fever's coming whether we like it or not. He mixed water with powder from a small vial. The liquid turned cloudy white, smelling of bitter almonds. Laudanum, 5 drops. Enough to dull the pain, but not enough to muddle your thinking. Sarah drank, grimaced. Tastes like poison. Close enough, Doc corked the vial. You'll need more on the trail, but too much, and you won't be able to sign your name at the land office. Clay spread the survey map on the table. The paper crackled, old and brittle. 22 miles to Stillwater. If we leave at dawn, we can make it by 3 o'clock. Trail's rough, Doc said. Travois will tear that leg open again. Then I'll carry her on my horse. You can't carry a grown woman 22 miles. I've done harder. Sarah's voice came from the cot, already thickening from the laudanum. I can ride. I've ridden worse. Both men looked at her. Not with a broken leg and fever, Clay said. Then tie me to the saddle. Her eyes were unfocusing, pupils going wide. I won't let them take it. James died for that land, plowed it, built a cabin. They shot him in the field, said he drew a weapon. He was holding a hoe. Her voice caught. She turned her face to the wall. Clay's jaw tightened. Canyondale? She nodded. That was 1880, spring. Clay's hands curled into fists on the table. 16 Apaches killed. I heard about it. Wasn't there, but I wore the same uniform as the men who did it. Doc's eyes moved between them, understanding settling. Can't change the past, Doc said quietly, but we can make sure her husband's land stays hers. Clay nodded, couldn't speak for a moment. Doc counted laudanum into a tin cup. She'll need this every 4 hours. More than that and she'll stop breathing, less and the pain will kill her before the fever does. He pulled out bandages, a bone saw, a curved needle with catgut thread, laid them on the table like a gambler showing his hand. If the infection spreads, I'll have to take the leg, but not until we're in Stillwater. Can't do field amputation and expect her to file a deed the same day. Sarah's breathing had gone shallow, the laudanum working through her blood. Clay checked his watch, 12:40, Thursday afternoon. 27 hours, he said. We need to leave by 5 a.m., gives us 11 hours of daylight. Doc leaned back in his chair, the wood creaked. Merrick won't let us ride out easy. I know. He'll send men. I know. Could be the law, could be hired guns, could be both. Clay looked at the blacklist letter on the table. His entire future crumpled into one piece of paper. Don't matter, he said. We're going. They spent the evening preparing. Clay oiled his rifle, loaded his revolver, counted ammunition, 36 rounds total. Doc boiled instruments in a pot on the stove, the metal clanking against iron, the smell of carbolic acid mixed with wood smoke. Sarah slept fitfully. Her forehead burned. Every hour Doc checked her pulse, pressed her glands, lifted her eyelids to check the whites. Fever's spiking, he said around 10 o'clock. She needs a hospital, but the nearest one's in Tucson, 80 miles east. We go to Stillwater, Clay said. File the deed, then worry about the fever. Might not have time for both. Then we make time. Outside, coyotes called. The wind picked up, rattling the door latch. Clay stood at the window, watching darkness swallow the ridgeline. He thought about the money he'd burned, thought about the job he'd lost, thought about the 15 years he'd spent following Merrick's orders, believing loyalty and honor were the same thing. They weren't. Near midnight, hoofbeats approached. Clay grabbed his rifle, moved to the door, but the knock came polite, 3 raps. It's Jake, Clay. I'm alone. Clay opened the door. Jake Wilson stood in moonlight, hat in his hands. His face looked 10 years older than this morning. Boss sent me to check if you changed your mind. I didn't. Jake nodded. Figured. He shifted his weight. Clay, I'm sorry. I had to witness that letter. He'd have fired me too if I didn't. I know. You've been a good friend. Best foreman I ever worked under. You coming to say goodbye, Jake? No. Jake reached into his coat, pulled out a folded paper. Coming to give you this. Clay took it, unfolded it by lamplight. A telegram, addressed to the Territorial Medical Board. Dated tomorrow. Unsigned but written in Merrick's hand. Request immediate investigation. Dr. Emmett Pruitt, medical license. Performed surgery 1878 without renewal. Endangering public safety. Recommend license suspension pending review. Clay's stomach went cold. He's going after Doc. Board meets once a month. Next meeting's Monday. If they suspend his license, they freeze his pension. Doc's 70 miles from broke. Clay, he can't afford to lose it. Doc appeared in the doorway behind Clay. He'd heard every word. Let me see that. Clay handed it over. Doc read in silence. His face showed nothing, but his hand trembled slightly. That surgery was on a miner with a crushed hand, Doc said. Saved his life. And my license was current. Renewed in 77. Merrick don't care about truth, Jake said. He just needs to tie you up in hearings long enough to make you think twice about testifying tomorrow. Doc folded the telegram, handed it back to Clay. Doesn't change anything. I'm still testifying. Doc, Clay started. I said it doesn't change anything. Doc's voice went hard. I've watched Silas Merrick ruin good people for 20 years. Steal land, destroy families, buy off sheriffs and judges. If he wants to come after an old man's pension, let him try. Jake looked between them. You're both fools. Maybe, Clay said, but we're fools who can still look ourselves in the mirror. Jake put his hat back on. I hope it's worth it. He turned to leave, stopped. Clay, Southern Trail's faster, 4 miles shorter than the main road, but it's rough country. Take water. Thanks, Jake. Don't thank me. I'm just trying to keep you alive. He mounted his horse. Merrick's going to be at that land office tomorrow. He knows you're coming. He'll have men waiting. The hoofbeats faded into darkness. Doc and Clay stood in the doorway. The night smelled of sage and dust, and the particular emptiness of high desert country. Behind them, Sarah coughed. Once, twice. A wet sound. Doc turned fast, knelt beside the cot. Sarah's hand came away from her mouth, spotted with blood. Doc's face went grim. Infections in her lungs. We've got 6 hours, maybe less. Clay checked his watch. 12:30 a.m., Friday morning. Doc worked through the night. He boiled water, changed bandages, forced Sarah to drink willow bark tea that smelled like bitter earth. The coughing came in fits, deep rattling sounds that shook her whole body. Clay didn't sleep. He sat at the table cleaning his rifle for the 3rd time, running an oiled cloth down the barrel until the metal gleamed in lamplight. At 3 a.m., Sarah's eyes opened, clear, focused. The laudanum wore off, she said. Doc checked her pulse. How's the pain? Bad, but I can think. That's what matters. He mixed another dose. 5 more drops, last one till we're on the trail. She drank without complaint. Clay stood, walked to the cot. We leave in 2 hours. I'll carry you to my horse. Ride slow. You just hold on. No. Ma'am, I won't be carried like a child. Sarah pushed herself up on her elbows. The effort made sweat bead on her upper lip. I'll ride. Your leg can't take it. My leg's already broken. My pride isn't. Doc and Clay exchanged glances. She's right, Doc said quietly. Pride's about all she's got left. Sarah swung her legs over the side of the cot. The broken one hung at an angle, still splinted. She gritted her teeth and stood, balanced on one leg, gripping the cot frame. Clay moved to help. She waved him off. I need to know I can do this, she said. Need to know I'm not helpless. She took one hop forward, nearly fell. Clay caught her elbow. Easy. I'm not made of glass, Cowboy. She hopped again, made it to the table, leaned against it, breathing hard. Her face had gone pale, but her jaw stayed set. You got grit, Doc said. I'll give you that. Sarah looked at Clay, really looked at him. You know the Apache word for honor? Clay shook his head. Ilah. She pronounced it slow. Ilah. Means to stand by your word even when it costs you everything. Clay repeated it. The sound felt strange in his mouth. Foreign, but somehow right. That's what you did, Sarah said. When you burned that money, that was Ilah. Just did what my daddy taught me. Your daddy taught you well. She reached for the knife on her belt. Small thing, bone handle worn smooth with use. She pulled it free, and before either man could move, she grabbed her braid and cut. The blade went through in one stroke. Hair fell to the floor, thick, black, glossy, even in the dim light. Sarah's remaining hair hung just past her shoulders now, ragged at the ends. What are you doing? Doc asked. Apache women cut their hair when they choose a new path. She held the severed braid, ran her fingers through it once. This was the old Sarah, the one who ran, the one who hid, the one who let men take everything from her. She handed the braid to Clay. Burn it. Clay took the hair. It felt alive in his hands, still warm. He walked to the stove and fed it into the flames. The smell rose sharp, burning keratin, protein, memory. The hair curled and blackened and turned to ash. When Clay turned back, Sarah was standing straighter. Something in her face had changed, hardened. New Sarah doesn't run, she said. New Sarah fights. Doc cleared his throat. Well, new Sarah better sit down before she falls down. She almost smiled. Almost. Clay and Doc spent the next hour preparing. Clay saddled his roan gelding, strongest horse he owned, 15 hands with a deep chest and steady temperament. He padded the saddle with extra blankets, built a makeshift brace for Sarah's broken leg using fence slats and rope. Doc packed his leather satchel, laudanum, bandages, carbolic acid, whiskey, willow bark, the bone saw wrapped in oilcloth. His hands moved with the efficiency of 50 years' practice. The survey map went into a waterproof case. Doc sealed it with wax, careful and precise. This map's the only proof we got that Merrick's lying, he said. Can't let it get damaged. Clay checked ammunition again, loaded his saddlebags with jerky hardtack, 2 canteens of water. He tied his bedroll tight, lashed his rifle to the saddle. Doc saddled his mule, ancient creature named Moses, 20 years old if he was a day, but sure-footed in rough country. At 4:30, false dawn started to gray the eastern sky. Clay helped Sarah outside. The morning air bit cold, smelling of sage and coming autumn. Stars still showed overhead, bright and hard. Sarah stood in the doorway, leaning on a makeshift crutch Doc had fashioned from a fence post. She looked at the horses, at the dark trail stretching south, at the men who'd risked everything for a woman they barely knew. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, not accusing, just wondering. Doc answered first. "Because I knew your husband. James helped me ford a river in '79 when my mule broke its leg. Good man. Didn't deserve what happened at Canyon Dell." Sarah's eyes moved to Clay. He thought about the answer, about the cavalry days, about the villages burned, about the 15 years working for a man who stole land the way other men breathed. "Because I've spent too long following orders I didn't believe in," he said finally. "Time I stood for something that mattered." Sarah nodded. "Thank you." Doc mounted his mule with a grunt, pulled the surveyor's seal from his coat pocket, brass stamp, tarnished but still legal, still carrying the weight of territorial authority. He held it out to Clay. "Take this." "Doc, listen, I'm 70 years old. If something happens to me on the trail, heart, fever, Merrick's hired guns, you need this. It's still got legal weight. You can witness that deed in my place." "Nothing's going to happen." "Humor an old man." Clay took the seal. The brass was cold and heavy in his palm. He could feel the engraving under his thumb. E. Pruitt, Territorial Surveyor, licensed 1866. "This seal witnessed 53 homesteads back in the day," Doc said. "Sarah's will be 54. Clay tucked it into his vest pocket, felt the weight of it against his chest. He helped Sarah mount. She bit back a scream as her broken leg shifted. He tied her carefully to the saddle, not tight enough to hurt, but tight enough she wouldn't fall if she passed out. She gripped the saddle horn with both hands. Her knuckles went white. 22 miles, Clay said. 6 hours if we don't stop. Can you make it?" "I'll make it." Doc pulled out his pocket watch, checked it against the lightening sky. 5:07. We need to reach Stillwater by 3:30. Gives us half an hour to spare before the land office closes. "Then let's ride." They turned south. 3 riders in the pre-dawn darkness, an ex-cavalry scout, a 70-year-old doctor, and an Apache widow with a blood-stained deed. Behind them the line shack sat empty, the stove going cold, ash from burned money and burned hair mixing in the firebox. Ahead, somewhere in 22 miles of rough country, Silas Merrick was waiting. The sun broke the ridgeline. Gold light spilled across the valley. And from the north, hidden in the shadows of a box canyon, 3 riders emerged. They made 7 miles before the men appeared. Clay saw them first. 3 riders blocking the trail where it narrowed through a box canyon. Red sandstone walls rose 20 feet on either side. No way around, no way back without losing an hour. He reined up, raised his hand. Doc and Sarah stopped behind him. The lead rider sat easy in his saddle, scarred face, gray stubble, rifle across his lap. Clay recognized him. Wade Sullivan, hired gun out of Tombstone, worked for whoever paid best. "That's far enough, Bridger," Sullivan's voice carried in the canyon. Echo bounced off stone. Clay's hand moved to his revolver. "This is public land. BLM survey from '76. "Don't care what it is. Mr. Merrick says this trail's closed." "On what authority?" Sullivan shrugged. "Mine." The 2 men flanking him shifted. Young, nervous, hands too close to their guns. Probably ranch hands Merrick hired for $20 in whiskey. Behind Clay, Sarah's breathing had gone shallow. He could feel her fear transmitted through the horse's tension. Doc rode forward. His mule's hooves rang on stone. "You boys know who I am?" Sullivan spat tobacco juice. "Some old sawbones." "I'm Emmett Pruitt, territorial surveyor for 16 years. Mapped this trail in 1871. It's federal easement. You're breaking the law." "Law's what Mr. Merrick says it is." "That's not how law works." "It is in this valley." Clay's jaw tightened. He calculated distances. 30 yards to Sullivan, another 10 to the ranch hands. If shooting started, Sarah would be caught in the middle. Doc, too. "We're going to Stillwater," Clay said. "You planning to shoot us in front of a territorial officer?" Sullivan's eyes narrowed. "Depends. You planning to file that fraudulent deed?" "Ain't fraudulent. It's witnessed, sealed, legal. Mr. Merrick says otherwise." "Mr. Merrick's a liar." The words hung in the canyon. The 2 ranch hands glanced at each other, uncertain. Sullivan's hand tightened on his rifle. "Careful, Bridger. You're already blacklisted. Don't make it worse." "Can't get much worse than unemployed." can always get dead. The standoff stretched, 30 seconds that felt like 30 minutes. Clay's hand stayed loose near his revolver. Professional, ready, but not eager. Doc cleared his throat, pulled a folded paper from his coat with deliberate slowness. "Mr. Sullivan, you might want to see this before you do something stupid." "What is it?" "Survey claim. Filed by Silas Merrick in 1880, the one he used to steal water rights from the Robles family." Sullivan's face didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. "So?" "So it's a forgery." Doc held the paper high. "I surveyed that land in '79. Merrick's claim says there's a spring at coordinates that don't exist. Pure fiction." Clay realized what Doc was doing, kept his face neutral. "You're bluffing," Sullivan said. "Am I?" Doc's voice carried absolute confidence. "I've got the original survey map from 1879, filed with the Territorial Land Office in Prescott. Cross-reference it with Merrick's claim and the forgery's obvious." He paused. Let it sink in. "I testify in Stillwater today. This goes to the Territorial Marshal. Every land claim Silas Merrick ever filed gets audited. How many you think will hold up?" Sullivan's eyes moved to his companions, back to Doc. "That's between Merrick and the law. And you're working for a man who'll be in prison this time next month." Doc leaned forward in his saddle. "How's he going to pay you from a cell in Yuma?" One of the ranch hands spoke up, voice cracking. "Wade, I signed on for $20 in a week's work. Nobody said nothing about federal fraud." "Shut up, Tommy. I ain't going to prison for Silas Merrick." I said shut up. But the doubt was there now, growing like mold in damp places. Doc pressed harder. "You boys got families? Tommy, you married?" "Yes, sir." "Wife know you're out here threatening a federal surveyor, because that's what this is. Obstruction of a territorial officer. 5 years in Yuma if I press charges." Sullivan's face had gone pale under the scar tissue. "You wouldn't. Try me." The silence stretched longer this time. A hawk called overhead. The sun climbed higher, heating the canyon walls. Sweat ran down Clay's back. Finally, Sullivan lowered his rifle. "This ain't over." "Didn't think it was." "Boss'll be waiting at the land office. He knows you're coming. Let him wait." Sullivan turned his horse. The two ranch hands followed, one of them, Tommy, looking back with something like relief on his face. The hoofbeats echoed away down the canyon. Faded. Gone. Clay exhaled. Didn't realize he'd been holding his breath. Doc folded the paper, tucked it back in his coat. "You really have proof about the Robles claim?" Clay asked. "Not even a little bit." "Jesus, Doc. Worked, though, didn't it?" Sarah made a sound. Both men turned. She was laughing. Quiet, breathless, but real. First time Clay had heard it. "What's funny?" Doc asked. "You." She wiped her eyes. "Old man bluffs 3 hired guns with a piece of paper. Apache women tell stories like that." Doc grinned. "Well, your people know good storytelling when they hear it." Clay turned his horse south. "Come on, we burned 10 minutes. Need to make it up." They rode out of the canyon into open country. The walls fell away. Sky opened blue and endless overhead. But Clay couldn't shake the feeling of eyes on his back. Sullivan would report to Merrick, and Merrick would be waiting. The land office was still 15 miles away, and Sarah's breathing had gone ragged again. Her grip on the saddle horn looked weaker. Clay checked his watch. 9:40 a.m., 6 hours and 20 minutes to deadline. At 11:30, they reached Crowfeather Springs. Clay saw it from a quarter mile out, a line of cottonwoods marking water, green against brown grassland. The spring bubbled up from limestone bedrock, clear and cold, feeding a creek that ran south for 3 miles before sinking back into the earth. $5,000 in water rights, maybe more in drought years, worth killing for if a man had no conscience. Sarah straightened in the saddle. First time in hours. "There. We should keep riding," Clay said. "Can't afford to stop." "No." Her voice came firm despite the fever. "I need to see it. Need to know it's real." Doc checked her forehead. "Fever's rising. We're burning time we don't have." 5 minutes, Sarah said. "Please." Clay looked at Doc. The old man shrugged. They rode to the springs. Dismounted in the cottonwood shade, the air smelled of water and earth and growing things. A luxury in country where most water tasted of alkali. Doc pulled iron stakes from his saddlebag. 4 of them, 18 inches long, tips rusted red. He'd carried them since 1871, used them to mark boundaries across the territory. Original corners should be here, 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 and here. He pointed to spots roughly a quarter-mile apart. Section 14, 160 acres, square. Clay took 2 stakes. Doc took 2. They pulled out a surveyor's chain, 66 feet of iron links, precise to the inch. "Hold this end," Doc said. Clay held. Doc walked, counting paces, checking his compass. When the chain went taut, Doc drove the first stake. The sound rang clear, metal on metal, iron-biting stone. They moved to the second corner, measured, drove the stake. Sarah watched from her horse, couldn't dismount without help, her broken leg hung useless. At the third corner, Clay's hammer strike missed, hit his thumb. He cursed, shook his hand. "You all right?" Doc asked. "Yeah, just distracted." "By what?" Clay looked across the grassland, thinking about who owned this before James Crowfeather filed. Nobody owned it. It was unclaimed. Before that, before surveying, before deeds and land offices and federal law. Doc was quiet for a moment, then, "Apache land. For generations, probably. And we took it. Called it progress. We did." Clay drove the third stake. The sound echoed across empty country. They finished the fourth corner. The boundaries were set. Legal, official, iron proof that Sarah's claim was real. When they walked back to the springs, Sarah had dismounted. She stood on one leg, leaning against her horse, staring at something under the largest cottonwood. Clay followed her gaze. A cairn of stones, knee-high, carefully stacked. At the base, a flat rock with words carved crude but clear. James Crowfeather, 1849 to 1880. He built good things. Sarah limped toward it. Clay moved to help. She waved him off. She made it to the cairn, knelt, broken leg dragging. Her hand touched the carved stone. "I brought them, James," she whispered. "I'm filing today. The land stays ours." Clay stood back, gave her space. But Sarah looked up. "Clay, come here." He walked over, knelt beside her. "Canyon Dell," she said. "Were you there?" His throat tightened. "No, I was stationed 50 miles south, 3rd Regiment, but I wore the same uniform, followed the same orders." "What orders?" "Clear Apache settlements from the northern ranges. Make way for homesteaders. We were told it was legal. Federal policy." "Was it?" Clay looked at the grave marker, at the careful letters some widow had carved into stone. "Legal and right aren't always the same thing," he said. Sarah's hand moved to the braid stub at her neck. She'd cut away the old life, the old fear, but the grief remained. "James wasn't a fighter," she said. He was a farmer, learned from Mormon settlers in Utah. Came here to build, not burn. They shot him in his own field. Said he drew a weapon. He was holding a hoe." "I'm sorry. You didn't pull the trigger." "But I was part of the machine that did." Sarah turned to face him. Her eyes were clear despite the fever. "You know what Elah means. True honor. You're living it now. That's more than most men ever do." She touched his hand, brief, then pulled away. "James would have liked you," she said. "He believed people could change, could be better than their worst moments." Clay couldn't speak. The weight in his chest was too heavy. Doc appeared beside them, his face grim. "We need to move, now." "What's wrong?" "Her pulse is racing. Fever's spiking. Infection's spreading faster than I thought." He checked his pocket watch. "It's 12:15. Land office closes at 4. We've got 21 miles left." Clay did the math. 21 miles in 3 hours and 45 minutes. They'd need to ride hard, push the horses, and Sarah could barely stay conscious. "We're not going to make it," Doc said quietly. "Yes, we are." Sarah used Clay's shoulder to pull herself upright, stood on one leg, swaying. "Help me mount." "Sarah, help me mount, or I'll crawl." Clay lifted her. She bit back a scream as her leg shifted. He settled her in the saddle, tied her wrists to the horn with rope, gentle but firm. If she passed out, she wouldn't fall. Her face had gone the color of old paper. Sweat beaded on her forehead despite the autumn chill. Doc handed Clay the laudanum bottle. "Last dose. Give her 10 drops. It's more than safe, but she needs it." Clay measured the drops. Sarah swallowed. Her eyes began to glaze. "Stay with me," Clay said. "Just a few more hours." "Not going anywhere." Her words slurred. "This is my land, my husband's land. They don't take it." Doc mounted his mule. Clay swung into his saddle, settling behind Sarah to keep her upright. They turned south. The iron stakes stood at 4 corners, marking boundaries no one could dispute. But as they rode away, Clay looked back once. The cairn under the cottonwood, a good man's grave, a widow's promise, worth dying for. He kicked his horse into a canter. Somewhere ahead, Silas Merrick was waiting. They rode hard, too hard. Sarah's body jolted with every stride. She'd stopped making sounds an hour ago, just hung limp in the saddle, kept upright only by the ropes at her wrists. Clay could feel her fever through his shirt, heat radiating like she'd swallowed the sun. "Doc," he called back. "She's burning up." Doc pushed his mule alongside, checked Sarah's pulse without slowing. His face went tight. 104, maybe higher. Infection's in her blood. How long? Hours, maybe less. Clay checked his watch. 2:47. The crystal was cracked from years of hard use, but the hands still moved. 13 minutes slow, he remembered. Adjust for that. Actually 2:58, 1 hour and 2 minutes to deadline. Stillwater appeared on the horizon. Adobe buildings huddled against the desert like they were ashamed to be there. Population maybe 200. One main street, church, saloon, general store, land office. And somewhere in those buildings, Silas Merrick was waiting. They hit the edge of town at 3:32. Clay's watch said 3:19, but he knew better. The horse was lathered, foam on the bit, sides heaving. Doc's mule looked ready to collapse. People stopped on the boardwalk to stare. A woman with a shopping basket. 2 men outside the saloon, a boy with a stick and hoop. Clay didn't care. He rode straight down the center of the street, dust rising behind them like smoke. The land office sat at the end of the block, 2-story brick building. Territorial flag hanging limp in still air. A sign above the door, Bureau of Land Management, Arizona Territory. Clay reined up hard. The horse stopped so fast Sarah's body pitched forward. He caught her, eased her back. "Sarah, we're here." No response. "Sarah." Her eyelids fluttered, opened halfway. "James?" "No, it's Clay. We're at the land office. You need to stay awake." Doc dismounted, staggered, caught himself on his mule's neck. 70 years old, and he'd just ridden 22 miles like a man half his age. Together they untied Sarah. Clay lifted her down. She screamed. First sound in an hour, raw and broken. Her broken leg had swollen inside the splint. The bandages showed through with dark stains, blood and infection mixing. "Can you walk?" Clay asked. "No. Can you sign your name?" "Yes. That's all that matters." He carried her toward the door. Doc pushed it open. A bell jangled. Cheerful sound, obscene in context. The land office clerk looked up from his desk. Wire spectacles, ink-stained fingers, ledger book open in front of him. A clock on the wall behind him showed 3:47, 13 minutes. The clerk's eyes moved from Sarah to Clay to Doc. Took in the whole picture. Broken leg, fever sweat, desperation. "We close in 13 minutes, he said. Not unkind, just fact. Clay set Sarah in a wooden chair. She slumped forward. He held her upright with one hand. Doc slapped the deed on the counter. The sound echoed in the small office. Homestead filing, Section 14, Crowfeather Springs, 160 acres. The clerk unfolded the deed, read slowly, maddeningly slowly. His lips moved, forming each word. Clay wanted to grab the man by his collar, shake him, make him move faster. But that would only slow things down. The clerk's finger traced down to the signature line, stopped. He tapped the smudged thumbprint at the bottom. "This the signature?" Sarah's head lifted. "I can't write English. My husband signed before. He's dead. I'm sole heir." "Thumbprint's not a signature, ma'am. Territorial law requires a written name and script." Clay's fist hit the counter. Wood cracked. "Her husband's dead. She inherited the claim. It's legal." "Maybe so, but I need a witness. Someone who saw the original transaction. Someone who can testify this deed is legitimate." The room tilted. Clay felt it. All those miles. All that pain. And it came down to a technicality. Doc stepped forward. "I'm the witness." The clerk looked at him over wire spectacles. "And you are?" "Emmett Pruitt, Territorial Surveyor, licensed 1866. Doc pulled the brass seal from his coat, set it on the counter with a heavy thunk. "I witnessed this land transaction in March 1881 when James Crowfeather filed his claim." The clerk picked up the seal, turned it over. The engraving caught lamplight. E. Pruitt, Territorial Surveyor, licensed 1866. Below that, the territorial crest. Official, legal, undeniable. "You got proof you surveyed that section?" Doc unfolded the 1871 map, laid it flat. The paper crackled, old and brittle. "I surveyed Section 14 in June 1871. Original plats on file in Prescott if you want a wire for confirmation. Springs located here." He pointed. "Boundaries run north-south, east-west, standard township grid. 160 acres, unclaimed until James Crowfeather filed in March 1881. The clerk studied the map. His finger traced boundary lines. Behind them, the door opened. Silas Merrick walked in, face red, out of breath like he'd been running. His boots tracked mud across clean floorboards. "That filing's invalid," Merrick's voice filled the small office. "I have prior claim, filed September 10th. The clerk looked up. "Mr. Merrick, I see your claim in the ledger, but this deed's dated March 1881, 18 months before yours." Crowfeather was Apache. They can't own land under federal law. Doc's voice came cold. "Homestead Act of 1862 says otherwise. Any head of household can file, regardless of race. Section 7, subsection 3. You want me to quote the rest?" Merrick pulled a folded paper from his coat. "I've got a survey showing that springs on my father's original range. Predates Crowfeather by 30 years. "Show me," Doc said. Merrick unfolded it, smoothed it on the counter. The clerk leaned in. Doc barely glanced at it, laughed, short, bitter. "This survey's dated 1880, signed by Chester Booth." "So?" "Chester Booth died in 1879. I was at his funeral in Tucson, stood in the rain while they lowered him into the ground." Doc tapped the signature. "This is a forgery, and a bad one." The clerk's eyes went wide. "Mr. Merrick." "Furthermore," Doc spoke over him, "we restaked Section 14's boundaries this morning. Iron survey pins at all four corners, matching my 1871 coordinates exactly. You can send a deputy to verify." He pulled a small notebook from his pocket, flipped it open, read coordinates aloud, precise to the minute of arc. "Those stakes prove the boundaries. My seal proves I witnessed the original filing. And this deed," he tapped the blood-stained corner, "proves James Crowfeather died for land that was legally his." Merrick's face had gone white. "This is fraud." "Yes, it is," Doc said quietly. "Your fraud." The clock on the wall ticked. 3:56, 4 minutes. The clerk looked at Merrick, at Doc, at the two documents on his counter, one dated 1881, witnessed and sealed, the other dated 1882, signed by a dead man. Sarah's voice came from the chair, barely a whisper. "Please." The clerk picked up his stamp, heavy brass thing, official seal of the Bureau of Land Management. He pressed it into an ink pad. The smell rose sharp, printer's ink, mineral oil authority. He positioned the stamp over the deed. Merrick grabbed his wrist. "You file that, I'll have your job." "Let go of me, Mr. Merrick. I own this town. I own the bank. I own half the ranches in this territory." "You don't own the law." The clerk pulled his wrist free, brought the stamp down hard. The sound echoed, final, irrevocable. He pressed Doc's surveyor seal beside Sarah's thumbprint. 2 stamps, 2 witnesses, legal beyond question. Then he wrote in the ledger with careful script, "Sarah Crowfeather, Section 14, Crowfeather Springs, 160 acres, filed September 16, 1882, 3:58 p.m. He blotted the ink, closed the book. "The land is yours, Mrs. Crowfeather." Sarah exhaled. Her whole body went slack. Clay caught her before she slid off the chair. Merrick stood frozen. His face cycled through emotions, rage, disbelief, calculation. Finally he turned, walked to the door, stopped with his hand on the frame. "This isn't over," he said. "Yes, it is," Doc replied. "And if you're smart, you'll leave the territory before the marshal starts auditing your other claims." And Merrick walked out, didn't look back. His boot prints dried on the floorboards, dark ghosts of a man who'd just lost everything. The clerk handed the deed to Clay. "She'll need to record the boundaries within 60 days, standard procedure." "We'll do that." Clay looked down at Sarah. Her eyes were closed, but her lips curved slightly. A smile, small but real. "You did it," he said. "We did it." Doc collapsed into a chair, pulled out his flask, took a long drink, offered it to Clay. Clay shook his head. "She needs a doctor." "She's got one." Doc stood, tired but grinning. "Let's get her to my clinic, save her leg if we can." Together they carried Sarah out into the late afternoon sun. The town watched. Merrick was already gone. Rode out hard, they'd hear later. Headed for Mexico. Never seen in Arizona territory again. The deed stayed in Clay's vest pocket. Bloodstained, witnessed, sealed, legal, 160 acres, water rights, a dead man's dream, a widow's victory, worth every mile. Doc's clinic smelled of carbolic acid and old blood. One room above the general store, cot in the corner, shelf of instruments, window facing west where afternoon light came in gold and tired. Sarah lay unconscious for 3 days. Doc cleaned the wound, drained the infection. The smell made Clay's stomach turn, rot and fever and the particular stench of flesh trying to die. Touch and go, Doc said on the second night. 50-50 she keeps the leg. And if she doesn't, then she's alive. That's better than the alternative. Clay slept in a chair beside the cot, dozed more than slept. Every time Sarah's breathing changed, he woke, listened, made sure she was still there. On the morning of the fourth day, her eyes opened, clear, focused. I'm thirsty. Clay poured water from the pitcher, held the cup to her lips. She drank slow, half the cup, then pushed it away. Where am I? Doc's clinic, Stillwater. You've been out 3 days. She looked down at her leg, still splinted, still bandaged, but the swelling had gone down, the dark stains were gone. Did I lose it? No. Doc says you'll walk again, with a limp, but you'll walk. Sarah closed her eyes. The deed? Clay pulled it from his vest, unfolded it, showed her the stamps, the signatures, the official seal. Filed. September 16th, 3:58 p.m. The land's yours. She touched the paper, traced the blood stain with one finger. James would be proud. He should be. What about you? She looked at him. You got no job, no money. Merrick blacklisted you. Yeah. I'm sorry. Don't be. I made my choice. What will you do? Clay had been asking himself that for 3 days. Hadn't found a good answer yet. Don't know. Drift, I guess. Find work where I can. Maybe sign on with a drive crew heading north. They don't ask too many questions. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Then, I need a ranch foreman. Clay's head came up. What? Crowfeather Springs, 160 acres. Good water, good grass, can run 50 head of cattle easy, maybe more. She shifted in the cot, winced. I can't do it alone. Not with this leg, not with the work that needs doing. Sarah, $45 a month. That's 5 more than Merrick paid you, plus a cabin, plus share of cattle profits when we start turning money. Clay stared at her. You serious? You know what Elah means. You've already lived it. I'd be a fool not to hire a man with that kind of honor. I don't know the first thing about running a ranch for a woman. Then you'll learn, same as I'm learning to walk again. Outside, a wagon rattled past. Someone called to someone else. Normal town sounds, life continuing like the world hadn't just shifted under their feet. I'll think about it, Clay said. Don't think too long. I'm filing those boundary surveys next week. Need someone who knows how to read Doc's coordinates. Doc walked in carrying a tray, soup and bread. He looked between them, grinned. She offer you the job yet? How'd you know? Clay asked. Because I suggested it 3 days ago while you were snoring in that chair. Doc set the tray on the table. Seemed obvious. She needs a foreman, you need work, and you two already proved you work well together. That was survival. This is different. Not that different. Doc poured soup into a bowl. The smell rose, chicken, carrots, something green. You helped her keep her land. Now help her build on it. Sarah pushed herself up on her elbows. I'm not asking for charity, Clay. This is business. Hard work, long days, fences to mend, cattle to buy and brand and drive, contracts to negotiate. I'll expect you to earn every dollar. I know how to work. Then say yes. Clay looked at the deed on the table, at the blood-stained corner, at the stamps and seals that made it legal. He thought about his daddy's words, about honor and deeds being the only things worth dying for. Maybe also the only things worth living for. $45, he said, plus cabin, plus profit share. That's what I said. And I make decisions about cattle and grazing. Don't need permission every time I want to move a herd. Sarah smiled, first real smile he'd seen from her. Deal. They shook hands. Her grip was weak from fever, but her eyes were strong. Doc ladled soup into 2 more bowls, handed them around. They ate in comfortable silence. Outside, the sun dropped toward the horizon. Long light stretched across the town. Somewhere a dog barked, a child laughed. Normal sounds, good sounds. Jake Wilson showed up that evening, hat in his hands, looking older than Clay remembered. Heard you filed the deed, Jake said. We did. Merrick's gone. Lit out for Mexico 2 days ago. Took his personal horses. Left everything else. What about the ranch? Bank foreclosed yesterday. Turns out Merrick borrowed heavy against future water rights he didn't actually own. Jake's mouth twisted. We're all out of work now. 23 men. I'm sorry, Jake. Don't be. Should have seen it coming. He shifted his weight. I heard Mrs. Crowfeather's hiring a foreman. Position's filled. Figured. Just wanted to say, you did right, Clay. What you did, burning that money, standing up, that took guts. Or stupidity. Sometimes they're the same thing. Jake put his hat back on, turned to leave, stopped. If she needs ranch hands, I'm available. So are a few others. Good men, honest. We don't hold with what Merrick did. Clay looked at Sarah. She nodded. Come by in 2 weeks, Clay said. We'll be hiring. Jake smiled. I'll be there. After he left, Doc checked Sarah's leg one more time. Unwrapped the bandages. The wound was healing. Pink tissue forming. No infection. No fever. You'll be up and walking in another week, Doc said. Crutches for a month. Cane after that. But you'll walk. Good. Sarah looked out the window, west toward her land, toward the springs and the cottonwoods and the grave under the tree. I've got work to do. 2 weeks later, Clay and Sarah rode back to Crowfeather Springs. Her leg was splinted still. She rode slow, but she rode. The iron stakes stood at the four corners, marking boundaries, marking truth. The cairn sat under the cottonwood, unchanged, unchanging. Sarah dismounted with Clay's help, limped to the grave, knelt. I kept my promise, James. The land's ours, and I've got help now, good help. The wind moved through the grass, carried the smell of water and earth and possibility. Clay stood back, gave her time. When she was ready, they rode to where the cabin would be, marked the corners with stones, started planning. The work ahead was hard, but for the first time in 15 years, Clay Bridger was working for something that mattered. Not orders, not wages, not another man's dream. Something real, something earned, something worth the miles. Some men spend their whole lives following orders. Never stop to ask if the orders are right. Just put their heads down and do what they're told, thinking loyalty and honor are the same thing. Clay Bridger did that for 15 years. Punched cattle, fixed fences, kept quiet, thought if he stayed loyal long enough, it would mean something. Took a broken-legged Apache widow with a blood-stained deed to teach him different. Sarah Crowfeather didn't get her land because the law was fair. She got it because 3 people, a foreman who burned a bribe, a doctor who risked his license, and a woman who refused to quit, decided fairness mattered more than fear. Doc Emmett Pruitt died 6 years later, 76 years old, went to sleep one night and didn't wake up. His surveyor seals still on file in Prescott, witnessed 54 homesteads in his lifetime. Sarah's was the last, and the one he was proudest of. Clay Bridger never worked for another man again. Ran Crowfeather Springs till his back gave out in '88. By then, Sarah's son, James, born 1884, was old enough to take over. Clay taught the boy everything: how to read land, how to judge cattle, how to know when honor costs more than money and pay it anyway. Sarah lived to see Arizona statehood in 1912. By then, Crowfeather Springs ran 200 head, employed 8 hands, supplied water to 6 neighboring ranches. The deed, bloodstain and all, hung framed in her cabin till the day she died at 73. The iron stakes are still there, rusted but standing, marking boundaries no man dared cross again. And on clear mornings, when the light comes gold across the valley, you can still see the cottonwood where James Crowfeather's buried, still see the spring flowing, still hear the wind carrying old promises across new grass. Some things, once earned, don't fade. They just grow deeper roots.